Welcome back to PCOS Unfiltered. Nourish, heal, thrive. The podcast where we cut through the noise and get real about what it takes to heal from the inside out. I'm your host, Lindsay, and today we're talking about something that affects so many women, whether they realize it or not. My guest is the incredible Grace Yoon, a nurse and nutrition coach who went from caring for patients to becoming her own patient when she realized her own blood sugar and health needed serious attention. Grace didn't just manage her symptoms, she reversed them naturally through powerful lifestyle changes. Today, she's here to share her journey, break down the link between insulin resistance, type 2 diabetes, and PCOS, and give us practical, doable steps to start reclaiming our health. Whether you've been diagnosed, suspect you might be dealing with insulin resistance, or just want to protect your long-term health, this conversation is going to be eye-opening and empowering. As a reminder, the content shared here on PCOS Unfiltered is for informational and educational purposes only. The views and opinions expressed by the hosts and guests are not intended to serve as medical advice. Always consult with a qualified healthcare professional before making any changes to your diet, exercise, or treatment plan. The information shared is based on personal experience and expert interviews and is not a substitute for professional medical guidance. Now, let's jump in. Hello. I am here with Grace. So thankful to have her here. She has a very powerful story. So let's kind of just jump on in. So, Grace, you were working as a nurse, helping patients every day, but you started realizing that some of the things that you were seeing for yourself needed a closer look. So, can you kind of tell us your story a little bit and that moment of like realization that you had?
Great. First of all, thank you, Lindsay, for having me here. It's really a pleasure to be here and to share a little bit about my story and what brought me here. But yes, um, so I I still work as a nurse, but my main focus is on nutrition. I've always loved nutrition, so I thought I knew it all. I thought I knew how to be healthy, right? I'm a nurse, right? But actually, it was my coworkers, especially back I would say COVID, because it got really heavy. During that time, they would often come to me and say, "Wow, are you okay? You look so pale." And in my mind, I'm just thinking, "Huh, like I'm Asian, right? I am pale." But this is across the seasons. I get tanned and stuff, but yet they said a lot of that kind of stuff to me. And I mean, it wasn't just one person; it was many. So I had to kind of take their feedback and try to not analyze it too much, but just receive it and then keep track of it. And so I noticed that they would say that a lot. And at the same time, I noticed things like, hey, I do feel a little, lightheaded. Okay, put a cool cloth on my head and that kind of stuff to make me feel better. And so that was if it wasn't for them, then I probably wouldn't have picked up on anything really because it's life, right? We get huffed. I think we just get really busy and we don't really pick up on these small things. So the
Yeah.
pale part of it really got to me and it kind of bothered me. Yeah. And then through that time, I noticed I picked up some patterns that when I was pale and I was lightheaded, I would kind of behave like someone who was addicted to something. That style of I need to have my sugar, I need to have a quick cold ice cap, and then I got my hit and then I would be a happy person again. Right, we can get along, I could be better to my patients, I would
Yeah.
have patience for them. And so that associated behavior um, really got me a bit scared too. Like, how do I act like this? Why do I act like this? So that
Yeah.
was my moment.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I had to stop.
Uh, yeah. I mean, you said a lot of good stuff there because, same thing when I was working as a nurse. And I feel like, especially nurses, moms, caregivers, you're just constantly taking care of everybody else. You just kind of have that, that nature. And so you don't stop and realize what's actually happening to you. And so it definitely sounds like, yeah, it took somebody else, to kind of say something. And then that whole like low blood sugar hunger, like I know I talk about with my clients, where you get hangry. Hangry is a thing. I know I used to get as a nurse too. And you can go into some dark places sometimes too with that, definitely. So the warning signs were definitely there.
Yeah.
So yeah, so how did you feel to be in the healthcare field then and just suddenly realize that you need to apply your own advice to yourself now?
I know at the very beginning, I didn't think it was a blood sugar problem. So for me, it was more because I was busy. The workload was heavy, um, 12 hours in the hospital and then coming home. I
Mhm,
had to take care of kids there. And, it's not a blood sugar problem. I'm just energy drained because of all the things that I had to do.
mhm.
And then surprisingly, I thought I was healthy and, like I didn't think that there was a problem. It was just, let me just balance and decrease my workload. And then, it's just external things. But yeah,
Mhm.
the application of applying certain advice, healthcare advice, I had to sort through that and say, okay, well, what I've learned already isn't working. So I had to kind of go deeper and explore a little bit more about other areas in health that I could reach into and access. And then, growing up, I always had this thing about nutrition. It has power. Food has power in healing. So I went back to that and I started to research and learn more, take more courses, become certified as a nutrition coach as well. And then at that time, that's when I could apply that um, information to help in my change, in my habit
Yeah.
change, and all that
Yeah.
other stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that's awesome. I mean, that's a yeah, great compliment for sure to like I wish I would have known back then what I know now for sure,
Yeah.
to help patients more. Um and just working those
Yeah.
long hours and you're just kind of yeah, go go go. Not even really thinking about it.
And at that time, I didn't think I was eating that much sugar because my colleagues too were drinking their pop, right? And um, their physicians too had gummies beside them, for energy, right? They said
Exactly.
energy. And that's when it didn't click too. I'm like, yeah, but there's other sources of energy, isn't there, that won't require us eating so much of it, right? So
Yeah.
that was a
Yeah.
I
I think the other thing is too, like a lot of times, we associate something like that maybe with being overweight, or weight issues can accompany that too. And so that might even be, part of it is like, yeah, I mean, I myself, same thing. Like I never really had a big weight issue, but my health was
mm,
suffering for sure.
yeah,
So I think sometimes that can get overlooked too, not just by looking at a person,
mm,
unfortunately, but there's still a lot more going on
mm,
there.
yeah.
Um, so yeah, so what made you just, you said nutrition, you kind of went back, and then what made you decide to really apply just that holistic, natural, nutrition-based, lifestyle rather than just kind of maybe saying, "Oh, it'll be fine. Maybe I'll take
Yeah.
some meds one day when it gets bad."
I really think it's because I didn't see the people coming into the hospitals always came back, right?
Mhm. Yeah.
Whether they were at the intensive care, critical care side, or just on the regular floors, we would still see that they had come back.
Yes.
So if we are truly a healthcare system, a healthcare promoting system, then they should be able to sustain their health at home, not in the hospital wall, not even just taking trips to their doctor's office and thinking that they're gonna get that magic health pill there and
Yeah.
then be healthy at home, because it never transpires that way. So that disconnect just made me realize that I no, that wasn't working for me. And actually, as before I started in nursing, that is what I always imagined, that hey, everyone's gonna come in, get better, and then everyone leaves.
That's true.
That's me
So
as
true.
a nursing
Yeah.
student. Yay, this is my thing. And when we get there, it's all about follow the protocols. You do what we say that in this situation, treat this person this way. And then if
Mhm.
something happens where, you know, they fall out of those boundaries or that category, then you call the doctor and we'll figure something out there. But it had to always follow something. But these are
Yeah.
individual people coming in with different individual like health needs and
Mhm.
circumstances that brought them here. But we're
Yeah.
treating everybody with this one way, right? So it was that little rebel in me that I couldn't,
Mhm.
it wouldn't come out, right? It just that's what I was feeling inside. So I knew that there
Yeah.
had to be something
Yeah.
else.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, we're in the same boat. I mean, the ER, we were on a first name basis with some patients sometimes. I mean, it was, it was crazy because they just, and the thing is, they would come in and we would do all the same tests again and, give them some meds to make them feel better and then send them on their way. And then they'd be back again. Yeah. I mean, and the healthcare system isn't truly set, doesn't truly set you up to be healthy in that sense. I mean, yes, like it serves its purpose, but I think, you and I both know there's still a lot more that needs to happen along with that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, and so were there any myths or misconceptions that you had to kind of unlearn about insulin resistance, maybe type 2 diabetes, as you were a nurse and kind of a patient, your own patient
Right.
at that time?
Yeah, so because my focus is on people who have type 2 diabetes and who have that uncontrolled balance of blood sugars, blood glucose, if we're technically correct, blood
Mhm.
glucose in their blood. So the biggest one was that you can actually reverse type 2 diabetes. You can reverse insulin resistance. Everyone, even my own colleagues, when they asked about when I started out in this nutrition coaching field, they're like, can you reverse type 2 diabetes? And as a fellow nurse, I said, yes. Doing like not out of judgment, but out of shock and surprise that we this is what we think too. And that's how
Yeah.
we were trained. And so the more you go deeper into it, realize, hey, you can reverse type 2 diabetes. Of course, if you've gone far long enough where other organs have been damaged, that's a different story. But if you've been
Mhm.
diagnosed that recently, then you're able to, if you make that commitment and just changing in the way that we approach the management. Again, I don't like the word management. And so that's another thing that I had to change. I don't like, let's manage type 2 diabetes. No, who wants
Yeah.
to do that when you can actually reverse it? So when we change the way we think about how we can approach a condition, manage type 2 diabetes. Okay, then that's what you'll do. But if you want to reverse it, then you'll do the steps that are needed to reverse it. So that was one thing. And then the second one was that you need insulin. So this is where PCOS will come into, and we talk a little bit, I guess, deeper into it. But
Mhm.
in type 2 diabetes, you don't need any more insulin. There's already enough. There's so much in there. So just tackling that notion that you're going to need it later because the meds are just going to take you so far, then what's the point of
Yeah.
taking them? But that we shouldn't be treating type 2 diabetes as type 1 diabetes, where you think like type 1 diabetes, they don't have enough, they don't produce enough. It's something physically in their body, they don't have it, so that they need it. But in type 2 diabetes, they do. So once we understand that, then the approach is different. Um, you don't want to overload the body with more. And anything, like our bodies want that balance. Anything more is always going to tip, anything less is going to tip too. So we always want to try to
Mhm.
get that balance in. And so that's why when we listen to our bodies, that's how we'll know if we're in balance.
Yeah. Yeah. That and I mean that's both great points for sure. I mean, I think especially that first one was very powerful and that's why part of why I wanted you on because, whether it is diabetes or PCOS, which a lot of the times is rooted in insulin resistance, it can be reversed, or at least, like you said, yeah, maybe even if you are to a point where you have some organ damage and stuff, like you can still improve your quality of life probably to a certain extent. You may not be able to heal completely or, reverse it. But I like that too. And also, uh, I know I've talked about this in other podcast episodes as well, but when the doctor hands you that diagnosis, typically,
Mhm.
and they say, we'll manage it, or it's a lifelong condition, it's already kind of setting you up for failure
That's
because, you're just thinking, I'm just stuck with this now. Like, this is going to be my life, and I'm going to have to see the doctor, and I'm going to have to take these medications. And, so if you start, yeah, thinking right offhand, okay, I can handle this, I can actually like overcome this. And
Mhm.
starting with that mindset, even, I think that can, yeah, take you really far. So that's a
Mhm.
great point. So the term insulin resistance, I know I've talked about it on my podcast a number of times. It always gets woven in. But still, I think it's still great to hear, from you. So it still is great to hear a few times because it's not fully understood. So how would you explain it in simple terms?
I would just say there's too much insulin. Really
Mhm.
simply, too much insulin. And that is when we that's when the problem occurs. So I just want to say that insulin has like many, many roles in our body. So one role that it is really known for is the blood glucose management.
Yeah.
Management. There I go again. Glucose levels, regulation of what we do with all that energy that comes in and how it's distributed. That's what it's known for. But it's also a hormone and a protein. But aside from that, the hormone signaling, like our bodies have almost all of our cells in our bodies have a receptor for that insulin.
Yeah. Yeah.
Anytime there's so much of those insulin signals going out, it depends on that person, right? Which body is gonna, like, if there's a weaker area in someone's body that is being affected by it more, that's what you're gonna see with the impact of high insulin. So
Mhm.
with PCOS, it's gonna affect the ovaries more because they have those receptors too. But there's so much of that signaling going on where you're gonna be okay, it's getting so stimulated. So that is going to be an effect of high insulin. People with
Mhm.
type 2 diabetes, it's about the glucose. There's so much of that in like coming in, the food, the sugar, the wheat, all that stuff. And it's not just food. Of course, a big part of it is there's other factors as well, like chronic stress,
Stress.
sleep,
Yeah.
sedentary lifestyle, which we'll talk about too, eventually. But I also think that when our body has a weak spot, that insulin, those levels of insulin will show.
Mhm.
So yeah, that's too much insulin in a
Yeah.
weak area of the body, then that's
Yeah.
where it will show itself.
And unfortunately, traditional healthcare, they're not checking
Mm.
insulin levels regularly. It's always a fasting glucose and an A1C. And that's where, yeah, like you said, high insulin levels. So that could be right there. Like that should be considered really pre-diabetes,
Right.
right there. Um, but that means that your body is compensating. So yeah, your glucose and your A1C are going to be fine until they're not because that insulin has been compensating. And then eventually it's gonna throw its hands up.
Right. I
So,
actually I actually asked, he's an endocrinologist, a family member had been seeing him. And so I asked about can we test for insulin? And he goes, why? He goes,
mhm,
it's all relative, right? And I said, but isn't that the same thing with, other blood tests that you do across whenever you take it one point in time in your life? What if you're really, really stressed? Or what if you really, really weren't, right? It's just a snapshot. I'm like, but if used properly, and if the physician or whoever's tracking can really make that testing available and suitable for that person, just I think it will it will kind of shock the nation, I think, because a lot of us will have high insulin levels.
yeah, yeah. And yeah, it may be a snapshot, but a lot of us, that get to that point are dealing with chronic stress.
Mhm.
And that can be from foods, from lifestyle, from relationships, from environment. I mean, all those things. So more than likely, even though it is a snapshot in time, because
Mhm.
it's probably a chronic thing at that point, um, then it's gonna be elevated. Yeah, and I know I've even heard kind of mixed with like optimal levels, definitely above 10 is cause for concern. I've heard optimals below 7. So I think that's the other thing too, is that they kind of don't fully understand like what a normal level even might be. Yeah.
I've heard even 6,
Yeah.
but that's
Yeah.
that's pretty.
Exactly. Yeah, there's some varying things out there. I think 10 is kind of like definitely the cutoff of like, but I know I know like for me, my brain for like my personal story and probably for you, like I want to know like root cause though too. And I feel like that really and then get myself to those optimal levels. I didn't pay attention to insulin when I first started my health journey like 5+ years ago. It was elevated when I first like now I test it and I'm fine. I didn't even really realize what it like why we were testing it and what, but it was elevated when I first started working with my doctor. So it's definitely a great indicator as to what's going on for sure. And so would you say then that insulin resistance is at the root of type 2 diabetes? And
Yeah.
then I mean for me I say a lot of the times yes for PCOS, but yeah, I think
It is at the root. Of course, there is high blood sugar. And we will, but the thing for me is that in type 2 diabetes, we are very glucose centric. Treat the
yes.
glucose, treat
Yeah.
what has happened after. And I get it. Like a lot of the steps and interventions to lowering glucose can help with insulin as well.
Mhm.
Some of it, but if we can just shift to a more insulin centric um, uh,
Yeah.
way of dealing and approaching type 2 diabetes, I think it will be more effective. And people will understand all of the elements that come together to help lower the insulin, which will lower the glucose. Because then you're trying to approach it 2 different ways. You're trying to approach it for the sugar level, and then you have another insulin thing that you have to deal with.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
think um, we tend to think of insulin when we think of insulin resistance. Oh, the body is to blame because they're resisting insulin. But then once we understand that, hey, it's because there's too much of the insulin, now it's an insulin problem, right?
Mhm.
I think we kind of, if we can get that straight and simply said, too much insulin will cause the resistance. It's like I don't want to say it in a negative way, but like as a parent, if I'm continually go to my kids and say, pick this up, pick your socks up, or pick this up, right? It's like, what? Like it's keeps going up higher and higher. And
Yeah.
yeah, it's just
Yeah.
something to picture, but it's not like insulin's doing that on purpose. It's because it's receiving inputs to do it, to because
Exactly.
right. So let's reset those inputs, the signals, and help our bodies, right?
Yeah. Yeah, that's an excellent point. Yeah. I totally agree. Focus on the insulin. If we can start shifting that mindset, that'd be amazing.
And then
Yeah.
if I could just clarify for type 2 diabetes that it's the I approach type 2 diabetes as a overflow problem where there's too much of that glucose coming in, like from our food, right? So that
Mhm.
it's our body, the insulin is being pumped out by the pancreas, and it's saying, okay, let's move these, let's move the glucose because our blood needs to be in balance, and we need to do things with this extra sugar. So it's being put away either in the muscle cells or that's the largest reserve. So that's why like muscle is great to have and to exercise. And then it will maybe shift over to the liver. And then from there, it if there's too much more insulin, will eventually store the extra sugar as fat. That's the role of insulin too, fat storage. But when it comes to type 2 diabetes, the muscle cells that are receiving all that glucose energy they're already full. And they're saying, we want to accept more, but we have no more room. And so that's why the pancreas keeps sending out the insulin, increasing that insulin level, but the muscle cells are trying to protect themselves and say, but we still can't, otherwise we're going to malfunction. We're going to create more inflammation and there's going to be problems. And that's what insulin does. You keep pushing out those insulin drivers, and then the cells eventually, get tired and they wear out as well. So the cells are also trying to protect themselves, is what I'm trying to get at with type 2 diabetes. So, insulin is great because it's a growth hormone too. We need it as we grow. But at the same time, we still also need to just make sure the levels are balanced.
Yeah. Yeah. Great point for sure. You already kind of just hit on this a little bit. So for our listeners, what are some signs that they might be struggling with insulin resistance? I mean, yeah, whether or not they've been diagnosed with diabetes, but there's definitely some of those warning signs.
Right. The first one would be it is that waist circumference where you're like struggling with the belly weight. Like sometimes in the mornings, I would be like, where did this come from? Right? Like, what's this? I'm like, oh, haven't I been eating well? Like, but again, our cycles are in play here, right? Everything is in place. So yeah, belly fat that just won't budge, right, is one
Yeah.
thing. And that waist circumference size becoming a lot larger than your hip circumference size is one big thing. Blood pressure, I would say, if you have high blood pressure, that is also something that is strongly associated with insulin resistance. And you can also feel it if you have a lot of headaches because of that high blood pressure, right?
Yeah.
Skin tags and like dark patches of skin, like around the neck or the armpits, those are also strongly associated. Then irregular cycles is part of that. Always feeling hungry and thirsty, thinning hair, and acne is also one, adult acne. I would also say from a nursing perspective, when it comes to our resting heart rate, so our resting heart rate is about in the 60s. So if you count, right, how many beats per minute, our resting heart rate ideally is 60 to 70, right, to 80. Maybe not 80, 60, 70. If you're lower, you're probably an elite athlete. But if you're resting and your heart rate is above 80, then you know that you're in stress. You're in stress mode. So I would say resting heart rate. A lot of people wear those watches these days, and you can easily access what it is.
Yeah.
So that is a sign that you don't even have to really go to the doctor for. You could do it on your own.
Yeah.
And then for me, it would also be during like 2 a.m. to 4 a.m. If I were to wake up, I'm like, oh, why am I waking up? I would say there's an insulin problem there because we need to be sleeping during those times. That's our deep restorative rest that we need to have for restoration and rebuilding and repairing. So waking up during those hours is a sign for me for that imbalance between insulin and your stress hormone like cortisol.
That's what I was going to say. Yeah.
You
Probably
could
some
say it
adrenal
more.
fatigue going on there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Those
Yeah.
would be my main.
Yeah. I think that.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Okay. I wanted to say the one big chronic stressor though too that I also noticed is this, and the studies do show, is the emotion of repressed anger. That is a chronic stressor in our bodies within, and you can hide from people too, right? So that is something that we need to do more of a deeper reflection on, like that hidden anger that will actually cause that chronic inflammation, which will also increase our insulin levels.
Yeah. 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 Internalizing a lot of stuff for sure. And that's where, breathing and meditation and, maybe some journaling and getting that out in some productive form is a great way, even just taking a couple minutes here and there to do that for sure.
Yeah.
But I know going back to those symptoms, I know energy, I feel like is one of the biggest things. You even said it for yourself. Yeah. And then it's a vicious cycle because like you said, you're up at like, between those optimal hours when you should be sleeping. And then you need caffeine to get you through the day. And it just kind of like, continues from there. But I know one of the biggest things as I talk to a lot of clients, I feel like a lot of it goes back to energy and the lack of it. And then as well as you said, like with the belly fat too, especially you feel like you've tried everything, working out. And sometimes those high intensity workouts and working out every day can just add more to it, unfortunately, adding to that stress. But yeah, when you feel like you've tried everything to fix that and nothing's working, that's definitely a big indicator as well.
Yeah.
Um,
And if you're also snacking every hour, oh, I'm
yeah.
guilty. So just, that's
Yeah.
what I was doing with the granola bars, right?
Yeah.
Everyone trying to be a superwoman,
Yeah.
that role on granola bars. And
Yeah.
I know that doesn't work.
Yeah. And I tried getting like the healthier versions, but
Yeah.
no, still weren't any better. Grace's story is such a powerful reminder that we're never stuck with the health we have today, and that real, lasting change is possible when we address the root cause, not just the symptoms. From her journey as a nurse facing her own diagnosis to helping her clients reverse type 2 diabetes naturally, Grace shows us what's possible when knowledge meets action. If you want to connect with Grace and learn more about her work, check out the links in the show notes. And if today's conversation resonated with you, share this episode with a friend or family member who needs to hear it. You never know whose life it could change. Until next time, remember your body is capable of healing, you are worthy of thriving, and it's never too late to write a new chapter for your health.